Hello, and thanks for listening to these stories of the strange, unexplained, and uncanny. I'm John Harford, and I'll be your guide through these mists of Mirkwood. I have a long and unique podcast written with some great custom illustrations in the queue. It is also set down in Tennessee, but my co-researcher and area photographer, Aslyn McNew, is having some trouble gaining access to the site for some additional original photos. It is a state park, and due to the COVID-19 lockdown, access has been restricted. So instead, she provided me with some personal accounts of strange happenings that she's collected over the years. Thanks, Aslyn. I'll have a few short ghost stories for you now, and a few more are on deck. That should get you through until we can hopefully get the photos for the lengthier episode. And with that, let's begin a short trip from the world of the rational into the realm of shadow reality. The University of Tennessee, Chattanooga, was founded as a private college in 1886. It went through a series of mergers until joining the University of Tennessee network in 1969. But the deep history isn't important. The fact that there is a deep history is important. The place is old, and it has a long and strange story. Brock Hall, now the Arts Building, is said to have been built on the site of an old jail and execution field. There are persistent rumors of strange sounds being heard as students work in the studios, day and night. Some of these include furniture scraping across the floors, as if heavy tables were being moved. And upon investigation, there is no evidence of anything being disturbed. A woman screaming from somewhere in the building is a regular tale that is told, and neither students, building monitors, or police ever report a screaming woman being found. A few blocks across campus can be found Hooper Hall. Footsteps can sometimes be heard walking the halls late at night, or so the stories say. There are rumors of night security and students finding a hanging body in an empty room on campus late at night. And then later, when authorities arrive to investigate, they often find a confused and flustered witness, and no body. There is record of a suicide hanging in the hall, and it is rumored that the place was once on the site of or just near a hospital known for illicitly buying and selling bodies. But of concern to our story is Sagmeister Hall, which is next door to Hooper. In 1973, Sagmeister was a dorm. Jane had just moved in and begun her studies there a month before. She and her roommate, Pauline, had become friends quickly and delved regularly into all kinds of topics in late-night conversation. One night, the co-eds got onto the topic of the paranormal, and Pauline revealed that she had, as a teenager, had been heavily involved in the occult, experimenting with witchcraft and, quote, satanic magic. This was dawning throughout the late 60s and early 70s, and this sort of experimentation isn't uncommon. Usually they don't yield any kind of result. These conversations became an ongoing thread for several evenings, and while interested in the discussion, Jane herself had never had experience with or any exposure to any unusual happenings, and the talk fell back to things more rational. Approximately a week after the first discussions on the occult, Pauline and Jane had been out socializing along with Pauline's boyfriend, Jeff. They stopped at the dorm, and Jane had to run upstairs to the dorm room, while Pauline and Jeff waited in the car. Upon opening the dorm room and turning on the light, she was astounded to see one of the tiles of the drop ceiling out of place. She stared, unsure of what she was seeing. It was floating several inches above the level of the drop ceiling frame. Surprised, she shut the door and ran down to the car. When Pauline and Jeff accompanied her back upstairs, several other tiles were also levitating. And as they watched, the tiles began violently shuddering and rocking while above the frame. This went on for several minutes, and then the tiles dropped back down into place. In Jane's words, many of the tiles were rocking and tipping wildly from side to side. Jeff, who was also one of the building's resident hall advisors, immediately got a ladder and climbed up to inspect the drop ceiling tiles and ductwork. There was no evidence of a person, animal, or other source of disturbance that could cause these ceiling tiles to float. There was one duct connected to an exterior wall, but it was sealed off, allowing neither entrance to the ceiling from the outside or excessive air movement. Pauline and Jane felt that their occult discussions, especially Pauline's revelation that she had dabbled in the darker aspects of magic, caused or at least enabled this manifestation. Well, I don't believe in any sort of traditional demonic or satanic force, at least not the kind that may be content with just causing ceiling tiles to float. I do believe in what I call priming the pump, and it ties in with the theory of poltergeists. Poltergeist, German roughly for rumbling ghost, are very traditionally associated with people experiencing intensely emotional or impacting life events. I feel that people can sometimes be conduits for energies, especially if they build up a space that is conducive to paranormal activity. Adolescents, people in the throes of a chaotic life event or stress, and similar individuals have been known to seem to activate events such as strange noises, as well as floating and moving objects. I can't speculate on the psychological or emotional state of either Jane or Pauline at this time, but I do believe that extensive discussion of these sorts of things may in effect build up an energy or an environment that allows for the manifestation of unusual events. In short, the people there will these things into being, intentionally or not. I've never decided on whether or not I believe a poltergeist is the result of a person's own psychic energy unwittingly causing things to occur, or if there is some sort of entity that feeds off of this energy and evokes these sorts of outbursts. But they are among the most well-known paranormal phenomena. From the Greco-Roman era onward, scholarly and anecdotal accounts have discussed the apparition of these noisy spirits that seem intent on causing usually harmless, if not startling, disruptions to our rational world. It should be noted that Jane has recounted the story in exactly the same way for over 40 years. There had been no variation in the broad strokes or detail points. She is a reliable and grounded witness, not given to frivolous stories. But it made an impact. She never forgot it. Paula and Jane left their dorm room at Sagmeister Hall that night and only returned the next morning to get their valuables. They then moved out of the room and never slept there again. The next two stories were related by William. He's now 68 and has been a long-time resident of the area. Like Jane, he's not given to fantasy. And while he has an interest in area history and folklore, he isn't an avid pursuer of supernatural experience. He has two tales. The first is from his childhood. He was at a sleepover in an old house on Missionary Ridge. The place is a Civil War battlefield and littered with monuments, old rifle pits, and graves. Most of the houses there are quite old, some of them as old as the 1800s. He was about 10 at the time, as were most of the boys. This house had a den with large windows on all sides. At some point near midnight, William looked out to see a figure of a man, vaguely translucent, pushing a wheelbarrow up the long driveway. His clothes were old. William couldn't identify the exact era, but even as a child he knew they were antiquated. As the man in the old clothes with the wheelbarrow neared the house, he simply vanished. William was stunned, and to his further surprise he turned to find several of the other boys were awake and also had seen the phantom. William also recounts another story from many years later, about 1995. He was driving alone, windows down, on a country road in Tenga, Tennessee, near the Georgia state line. There was nothing around but fields and sparse woods. He suddenly heard a man's voice, loud and slightly aggressive, yell, "Hey!" Thinking someone could be in trouble, William turned around a bit further up the road. At about the point where he had heard the voice, he spotted something that he had not noticed before. Along the side of the road was a memorial. William later stopped into some local spots and asked about this memorial. it was revealed that several young men had died there in a car crash about a year earlier. Thanks for listening, and I hope you enjoyed these personal strange accounts. Please like this video, assuming you do. Subscribe to the channel and share these videos if you like them. I'm interested in any feedback or comments that you have, and don't hesitate to say hello. You can also find us at www.mirkwood.com, that is Mirkwood with a Y, and on Facebook at our Mirkwood Tales page. Audio-only versions of the podcast are available at mirkwoodtales.podbean.com, iTunes, and other major streaming sites if you search for Mirkwood Tales. If you are listening to a podcast version of this, search for the video channel on YouTube called Mirkwood Tales. You'll get some additional content with the visuals. Got a tale you want to share with me and my listeners? Send me an email at tales@mirkwood.com or through private message over at the Facebook page. Be safe, best wishes, and stay strange.